ITMA 2023 Revisited, with the future of textile technology.
Hello everybody and welcome to a new edition of ITMA 2023 Revisited, the podcast brought to you by Textile ETP and ITMA2023. I'm your host Lutz, and today I'm talking to Alejandro Gallego, the Secretary General of AMEC AMTEX, the Spanish Association of the Textile Machinery Industry. We're talking about a fairly wide range of subjects, about global market trends that the members of the association see as they operate across the globe. We're talking about sustainability, energy efficiency and circularity, and we're also talking about digitalisation, which is a very important trend for the coming years. I hope you find this episode interesting, and if you have any comments or any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Hello, Alejandro. Very nice to have you here on our ITMA 2023 Revisited podcast with us. It's good to connect with people who really know the textile machinery industry really well and in and out. And I think you are in a very privileged position to know the industry quite well. So maybe if you first tell our listeners who you are and what you do in your daily life, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Lutz. I'm very happy to be here with you, and I appreciate Textile ETP for giving me and AMEC AMTEX the opportunity of participating to your podcast. I have been listening some of the chapters, and they are really interesting. So my name, as you said, is Alejandro Gallego. I am the Secretary General of AMEC AMTEX, which is the Spanish Association for Textile Technology Manufacturers. So our main volume of members is of machinery producers, but we also have textile chemicals producers, software developers. So we can say that also in the association, we have the perimeter of the suppliers of the textile manufacturers.
And these companies, would we say these are mostly sort of medium-sized companies? Are there any bigger players there, or is the majority of your members sort of medium-sized companies, smaller companies, very specialized and so on?
Yeah, this is a good question. Most of our members, they are familiar, traditional SMEs. Now, we have some best cases, some big companies that they are also able to have different commercial offices, even factories in the different textile markets. But the big volume of companies, which are Spanish companies, they are SMEs. And companies that they were, most of them created in the 20s, 30s. So most of them, they are third, fourth generation companies, which I'm always very happy when I go to companies where you can see the name of the company is exactly the surname of the person that you're going to talk to. So at the end, there is a lot of experience, a lot of background, a lot of comparisons with the old good times. This, I guess, we are going to talk about it now.
Indeed. And I think this is something that also matches very well, actually, with the textile sector, where I think we have the same dynamics, and which is something that I really always personally enjoy so much, to have these companies that do not operate from quarter to quarter. These are companies that operate from generation to generation. And that is really, for me, it's something so beautiful in a way. It's such a real way of doing business in some ways, so that it's a question more of stewardship than management, really. So and I really resonate with you there on this, that this is really something quite nice. But then the interesting thing often, and I think that also applies to your members, is that while these companies are very sort of long established in the place where they are, many of these companies today are probably global players. So if you can maybe explain a little bit in broad strokes, what are the end markets for your companies? How much of their business is sort of home market, whether you define it as Spain or sort of the EU, and how much of that is the global market? Just really as a general sense.
Yeah, of course. As you said, our members, they are, most of them, highly internationalized. They around 75% of the exports of the textile machinery manufacturers in Spain, they are out of Spain. But I have here some numbers. 25% of our exports, they are into the European Union, to the common market. In some markets like Italy, France, and Portugal, we can say they are like domestic sales at the same time. And also UK is in an important place in when we are talking about sales, international sales of our members. But if I have to say which is the most preferred market, where do the bigger amount of machinery that is sold every year in Spain, where does it go to, is United States, which is quite an interesting market. It's not an easy market to work because of the machinery regulations that you have to apply to your product to export. And it's a market where we also have these best cases of companies, these big companies in Spain, where they are also opening factories, technical services, and commercial offices. And and the rest of the markets, as you might imagine, out of the European Union, out of Spain, are China, India, Bangladesh, and Uzbekistan. That I believe is a common European target when we are talking about markets. And you were just mentioning on how the companies are traditionally. I would like to point out that there are companies that when they invest, then they do it for the long run. They do it for the long term. For example, when they are investing in United States, they apply a strategy of even changing their brand or adapting their brand to the market. But most of our members, because of this familiar aspect that I was commenting, it is important that the name stays into the brand and they try to get into the customer with their culture. Is one thing that I will highlight of the Spanish companies, that they always try to bring their culture to the market, to the customers, and they give this special client attention. They stay with the client. They try to create an environment of cooperation and collaboration with the customer that they work to. I believe maybe because of the aspect of being familiar and being traditionally working for many years in the sector.
So I find that really interesting, because I don't think that this is very common for if we were to look at other sort of European countries, textile machinery exports, to have the US as their top market. So is that something that is really long established for the Spanish industry, or is that something, obviously the US textile industry is very closely tied also to manufacturing in Central and Southern America, with their preferences of exporting into the US market. Is that something that has played a role, or what made the US this traditional stronghold for the Spanish textile machinery industry?
Yeah, a big impact of the sales is because of the technical textiles. So I will say that traditionally in Spain, as everybody knows, there has been this garment and fabrics manufacturing, traditional textile, we can say, that has been very important for the sector for the last years. But in the last years, even in a pre-COVID phase, we could see many Spanish textile machinery companies going to Textile, bringing technical textiles solutions, when many other companies there were not still in the sector. So United States, which is known for the technical knitting, for warp knitting, for this kind, also weaving, spinning, we have many companies who have solutions for this kind of sector. And at the same time, the big companies that we have in Spain, they have opened factories before COVID, and even we have a company that opened the factory 25 years ago, and they are developing the market. Even the sales in the United States might be bigger even than in the European Union for some of our companies. I believe that the United States is a country that if you invest and you put resources and time into it, can give you return of investment, and even develop and give good benefits to the companies that they really invest on it. The difficult aspect of it is to really stay. because the textile sector, I believe, for the last since 2019, we can say has been experiencing ups and downs. We might say some more downs than ups. There were some 2021, 2022 good moments that many companies they experienced a big performance in their factories, but when this period started in 2019, it was difficult to continue investing, continue traveling to the market, continue certifying your product. But the companies that they were there before, they stayed, they didn't close and come back to Europe and Spain.
Yeah. Okay, well, then maybe let's stay with the American market for a moment, because obviously I wanted to discuss also a little bit with you how you see the current trends in the industry, so which markets are moving and in which direction. So obviously the US is I would say quite a healthy economy in general. I think there's also quite some boost that the US has received, both through, I think, political intervention, the Inflation Reduction Act, but also energy prices that are a lot more competitive compared to Europe. So do you hear from your members that the US remains a growing, a positive market right now? Or what are the expectations there?
This is a good question. What we are listening from our members is that the United States is a place to stay, even if there are political changes in the near future. Elections are in November, which the real concern for companies is that we are talking about the United States, but the main textile marketing and the main textile market, right now in the world is China. And this is something that we have to admit. We have a big number of companies participating into ITMA Asia. ITMA Asia shipment that is in October 2024 this year, was also last year. And the real concern is how they should manage a potential critical situation between both countries. But in terms of United States, the market is not performing as good as it was doing in 2021, 2022, where they experience a big demand and orders coming in, but still it is a healthier market if we compare it to Europe, countries that are also technical textile markets as Germany, for example, which is not performing as good as it was pre-COVID and all our markets. But for answering your question, United States, we are still, even the concern, we are still getting good feedback, even if there is a political change. The industry, the manufacturing sector in the United States is not expected, at least by our members and by ourselves, to experience a big drama or a big change. Even maybe can be even more supported or even receive some more fundings. I was talking to some of our companies before talking to you, Lutz. And there is a company that is, well, I prefer not to say the name just in case, but they are in the finishing part of the textile value chain. They manufacture machinery for garment, and they are thinking that the 10% of their whole production is going to be in the United States in the next 3-5 years. So this might even, if you hear about it, you might think this is very less. But we have used to spend the 100% of the production for most of our members to be in Catalonia or the south part of Valencia community. So things are changing. And as we were saying, in the United States, also in other countries like India, we are experiencing companies investing in the market there. But now that we are talking about the United States, it is something that we see.
So interesting. So maybe let's then move from the west to the very east. So Asia, obviously Asia is in obviously total volumes is absolutely the dominant market for textile production, but obviously Asia is not one monolith in some ways. So we have obviously China as the elephant in the room, but there's a lot of, I think, movements there as well. And you mentioned obviously some of the rising discussions about dependence on China and these kind of things. So what are some of the trends that you hear of when it comes to Asia in general, let's say as a total market, but also, let's say, looking a little bit at some of those different countries? You mentioned India before, there's Vietnam, there's Bangladesh. Indonesia and so on. They're countries that I think we see a certain diversification in the Asian market, sort of moving perhaps certain production out of China into other markets. What are you hearing there?
This is a very good point. As I said before, I usually visit a lot of companies. A lot of our members, they go to their factories. I like to see their factories, how they are running. And one thing that I like a lot to see also in companies is most of them in their offices, they have the map of the world of where they sail. And you can see some of the points where they have their machines. And at least in Spain, I guess in other countries also, you can see, but you see all the map with points, and when I talk with my members about their strategy, their global strategy, now they are saying to me, it's very difficult to anticipate to where you're going to have the next order right now, because the world is changing. And if we can say which is the region which is more difficult to predict, probably is Asia, Southeast Asia. I have some of the figures here. Last year, China, it was not even in our top 5 markets. Right now is the 3rd. If we compare it from last year, how we are performing. So China is experiencing a big growth, but just this year. Last year, we were not performing as such. India, exactly the opposite. This year, we are selling less machinery in India than last year. So I might say we have to admit that in Asia, there are big textile manufacturing markets with the whole textile value chain in it. You might, as you said, China is the biggest one. India is a market that we see is the market to go for the next 5-6 years. With companies, they have to think for an investment of a commercial officer, or they need to invest on training new talent. That this is something that I guess we will talk about today, but we hear about companies that when they have to offer technical service, they are training people in their India commercial offices or factories, and then they are the ones who go to do the technical service. So India is a growing market where companies, they are investing. And 2 traditional markets that for the last 5 years have been in our top 10 markets, which are Pakistan and Bangladesh. For this year, we are receiving a lot of calls and companies asking how they can manage the situation, because financially there are being some issues. Not the Spanish banks, they are not confirming some credit operations, and there are being some difficulties. I believe Pakistan is not experiencing a very good economical situation right now, which is one of the main denim manufacturing countries in terms of volume. And Bangladesh, which their share of exports is mainly focused on textile, garment, fabrics, products. Also, we are hearing that there are a lot of interest, many projects being presented, but at the end of the whole funnel of sales, they are not closing, and the reason usually is because of the financial issue.
Okay. Well, so overall, a very mixed picture, I would say, in Asia. It's still sort of very positive overall and long-term trends. Very interesting what you said about India, and I think I'm fully with you there, that India, I think, is a very, very interesting market overall, especially also in the sense of both, I think, in terms of an economy that some people describe as resembling a China 20 years ago, but also, I think, an interesting country when we look at sort of diversification of supply chains within Asia, and a growing economy, a growing sort of end market as well. Maybe let's move a little bit closer to home. So when we look at Europe and let's say the greater Europe area, which then also including countries like Turkey and so on, what's the latest trends you're seeing there?
Yeah, one of the most important aspects to take into account is big textile groups. When we are coming closer to home, as you were saying, we have to look at what do big textile groups focus their suppliers in. Turkey has been one of the big markets for these groups, where usually when we know where these big groups are focusing their attention on finding suppliers, then also we focus our strategy on promoting textile machinery manufacturing brands. So what we do is try to focus where are they going. In terms of Turkey, for the last year, we have been experiencing that is a market that is going down. Usually is a traditional supplier of big textile groups, Spanish groups and European groups. But lately, we are seeing that this is shifting to the north part of Africa, also where we are seeing some movements of new suppliers coming up. But Turkey is still a big market for us. There is a market where we had many companies exhibiting at ITM this last June. There is a market that economically right now is also suffering, but companies, they have been acquiring new intermediaries, sales agents, commercial offices, and they still believe in the market because this is something that I believe maybe is the culture of the Spanish companies. But even when times are bad, companies, they still go to see their sales agents, their customers, understand their needs, understand their problems, and when better times will come, then we will be also there. But we don't tend to disappear when things are not as good as they were.
Which is, I think, the whole idea of a company managed for the long term. So you can suffer a bad year or a few bad quarters without your shareholders revolting, and that helps. So that's really good. So now really looking maybe before we move to some really completely different trends within Europe, do we see anything that resembles reshoring, nearshoring? What is the things that you see there? Looking at some of the major countries that you mentioned, obviously the whole market of Spain, but also Portugal, Italy, some of those countries, maybe Southeastern Europe.
Well, my answer is going to be not very optimistic for the short, mid-term. We had from AMEC AMTEX our board meeting some days ago, and I was asking some of these questions. So you see also some nearshoring, some companies moving from Asia to Europe, at least some new R&D offices being open in Europe. And because probably of the current situation of the textile sector, there are very less investments in Europe, in new equipment, in factories, in offices. So probably companies, they are looking at the situation, expecting on some increase in orders for them to invest, probably. We have heard of some companies that they moved their manufacturing sites to East Europe, countries like Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, that they are now not working even 5 days a week. And they are thinking about moving them to the north part of Africa, countries like Morocco, that are putting a very good environment, industrial environment for companies to invest near to Spain, to the common market of Europe, with less manufacturing costs. But I'm not very optimistic of companies right now doing any kind of nearshoring or new investments or reinvestments of their factories from Asia to Europe. And maybe it's just the Spanish point of view, but we are not seeing a lot of movement or activity in these terms. Probably will happen in the future, but talking about nearshoring, I might give you another answer. We see companies that, at least textile machinery companies, that they think if they should open in the markets where two big zones of influence, which is the American zone of influence and the China or Russian zone of influence, because as you might understand, there are markets, because of the political situation and the full global situation, that are being closed for our companies. So this also at the end affects the amount of sales. And at the end, companies, they are thinking on how they do in terms of strategically, if they should open commercial offices, even factories. But this means at the end, delocalizing from Europe to go somewhere else, not bringing anything back to Europe, which is very concerning for associations like us.
Yeah. No, I see. And I think some of the issues in Europe are definitely related to end market demand, which I think where we're seeing in the textile sector, I think a confluence of a relatively sluggish, let's say, consumer market in terms of clothing and fashion and home textiles, but also several of the technical and professional end markets, such as automotive, construction, and so on, not being in great shape. And I think that combination obviously makes it difficult. And then we had the issues related to, for instance, energy costs. And maybe let's make that shift now, because obviously there are geographical trends, but there are also many other trends that I would like to talk to you about. And one of the big trends, obviously, that everybody talks about is sustainability. And sustainability has many facets in a way, but I would say the most, let's say, the most classic one, obviously, and that textile machinery has always sort of focused on, is the issue of resource efficiency, using material, using water, using chemicals, and using energy in the most efficient way when you produce. So how do you see sort of the sustainability debate and maybe that sort of reference to resource efficiency, also CO2 emission reduction, and so on? How does that impact, let's say, the innovation in your companies?
I will talk about Spain as a Spanish textile sector. There are two big aspects to take into account. The first one is that in Spain, most of our national sales in terms of textile machinery, but I'm going to talk about the textile manufacturer. They are being audited a lot by big textile groups. So the textile manufacturer in Spain, a big share of their sales in the national in Spain, they are being made to the big textile groups. And these textile groups, we all know that they have their own audits. The thing is that each one of them, they have theirs, and they are different but similar in a way. But this also makes that textile companies, they have to be updated because of these audits. And it's not, we are not just talking about, for example, water treatment. I will give some examples now, but these kind of audits, they go even into the social aspect of the company, which I understand that brings textile companies into a big level of being updated in terms of sustainability. But the second aspect is how Spain is also regulating right now, which this is probably coming from the European Union regulations in the textile sector, which Spain is implementing out of this sustainability regulations that are being proposed for the 2030 by the textile strategy of the European Commission. We have some examples. For example, we have a new text that is called CEBAN, that is a report that textile manufacturers, but every producer, it doesn't matter which sector are they into, they have to state their level of CO2 emissions, and not just in their manufacturing lines, even in some other aspects. This also makes the companies to be investing, to comply with the regulations. We have another new tax that is coming in place in the January of 2025, which is, we don't know it in Spain by the name of SCRAP, which is a community that is around the producer that is going to be managing the waste that the producer creates. This is also something that the companies, they need to take into account, they need to comply with it at the same time. And well, this makes, I believe, Spanish companies, at least the ones that I visit and the ones that we see, and the ones that my members, they're seeing their machinery into in Spain, to be updated, to be complying with the requests of the big textile groups and also the Spanish sovereign government. And I believe they are updated on this. I can give you some of the some examples on what we see. We see regulations on CO2 emissions, as I was saying. There are regulations also in water treatment inside dyeing processes. Recycled polyester, very measured. So there has to be a specific amount of recycled polyester, the amount of chemicals that is being used per liter, of course, in the dyeing processes in the finishing factories. And well, I believe that all this ecosystem makes the Spanish companies to be updated in terms of sustainability. But Lutz, what we see is that companies, that what they really need is to invest in new equipment. There can be retrofitting. This is, of course, something that the company tries to do with the small margin that they might have now, considering the current situation of the textile sector. But what we see, at least in Spain, is that a real funding or help by the government, at least for the companies to change and acquire new equipment, is what is going to bring sustainability into the next level. Because we have companies, members of AMEC AMTEX, that they are presenting recycling solutions, such as, I can give a name, Ibiza. We have Macias, which is also a company that they have non-woven making machinery. They work for big companies. So the solutions are there. What we lack is the purchasing power by the textile manufacturer, which, of course, considering the current situation of the sector, is not going to be able to make this big step. It's going to, let's say, comply, because this is what probably is the maximum that can be done right now.
Yeah. Well, you spoke about many things related to sustainability. I want to come back to the recycling and the waste issue a little bit later. I want to zoom in still a bit on the energy, because I think there's also something that I believe Spain is quite in a leading position when it comes to renewable energy. I think there's a lot of renewable energy generation in Spain. I think we're seeing also more and more impact of battery technology. I mean, stationary batteries. I know of companies in Spain, Portugal, textile companies looking into this or investing into this. So which obviously has a positive impact on the CO2 emissions, may also have a positive economic impact if you can, especially if you can feed excess energy that you may locally generate into the grid, which is not always easy, we know. But there's, of course, a big issue that is many processes, especially the wet processes, are not yet run with electricity. They're still run mostly with gas. Do you see this as a big theme? I mean, I'm a big believer that over time we have to electrify all our processes, because when we electrify, when we stop burning stuff in order to have the energy that we need, I think that's when we can really drive both efficiency, but also especially CO2 reductions. Do you see that as a big discussion that you see, especially with companies that are more in the wet processing sector? Are they intensively looking into this, or do they still see that the industry is too far away from that?
Yeah, this is a very good point and a very good question. I've been talking to some wet process companies before talking to you, Lutz. Gas is still required. So they see that in the mid-long term, things are going to change, because the Spanish government is applying many regulations and trying to change the energy sector in Spain. I can give you some figures. Right now, the 51% of the energy that is being created in Spain is renewable. So most of it is from the wind power aspect and the wind power effects. But there are still some homework to do on this, because we know that Spain is a gifted country in terms of sun, and we have a lot of sun. But the solar panel generated energy is the third of the renewable energy to be generated. So I believe that still Spain has a way to work towards being much more renewable. At the end, in the companies, gas in some aspects has to be there. But I wanted to explain that during 2022, the Spanish government gave funds for companies to install solar panels. And most of the companies, textile manufacturers, but also textile machine manufacturers, they leverage this opportunity and I could get some, this is from information that companies gave me, but around 15% of the energy that is consumed is generated by solar panels. So I believe this is not, of course, enough, but considering this 15%, the 50% of the electricity being generated by renewable energy, and some of them using gas, I might say that we're in a good position in terms of energy consumption. But I can also say that companies, associations, and I believe the whole sector sees a good way still to be involved in this case.
Yeah, and when you refer to this 15%, is that 15% is that locally produced? So energy that they produce on their own. So let's say solar installation, or does that also include renewable grid energy that they?
Their own. So they have in their factories, in their roofs. Now, if you go around spanning, not just textiles, if you go around an industrial zone in Spain, you might find all the roofs covered by solar panels. And this, the companies, they have also offered good solutions for manufacturers to warehouse their own energy and be consumed when it's more needed. So this energy is being renewed by them and also used at the same time. Most of it is consumed, but even they have the opportunity to, the one that they're not using, send it to the distributor, gather it, and when it's used, then they can resend it at the same time. So I believe that the system now is working at an initial phase, but I can say it's beneficial for companies.
No, I believe it's really, I think it's an irreversible trend in a way. I think also when we see where battery technology is going, where prices for batteries are going, I think it will become a no-brainer for any company that produces local, that has the chance to locally generate renewable energy, to also store it so that they can use their own excess energy that they may generate in the middle of the day, and they can use that in the early or late hours of the day. So that's, and I think we should also not forget that, yes, there is still work to be done in Europe, especially also on the energy grid, to make it even more flexible to receive renewable energy when there's an excess and then discharge it again when it's when there's less production. But when we look at the situation in some other countries, I mean, I just recently heard that in Bangladesh, more than 80% of producing companies are not even connected to the grid, because the grid is so unreliable. They all produce basically their local energy mostly with gas for their factories. So that in that sense, I think some of these countries have a very long way to go. Whereas I think we in Europe are here in a privileged position. And I hope that also this kind of privileged position will be sort of favored through regulatory trends, and will hopefully also see some of the production maybe at least diversified also into Europe, where energy is then more abundant and is clean. So I think that's really interesting. Let's then go back to the question of circularity, recycling, and waste. So I think Spain also is a bit of a forerunner in that sense. I think there are quite some companies in the textile business in Spain that are investing into collection, sorting, recycling operations. So I'm sure you already mentioned at least one company name that I recognize that is in that business. So there are probably also other companies in your association that are in that business. So what do they see in terms of trends here? Is that something that is an immediate growth market? Is that more of a medium to long-term growth market? What do they see?
Yeah, so as you were saying, we see this is a trend, but I believe the technology is now more developed than what the market asks. And this is a problem. And why? Because for being able to display this kind of technology, there is an investment to be made. And right now, the sector is not probably being able to do it. But we have companies that they are developing the technology when the market is not even asking for it. So I have companies, the ones that I mentioned before, that we are helping them, working with them in their internationalization of these brands that they are manufacturing, instead of being able to use them in Spain or to sell them. Even there are some good initiatives, and I believe that our dialogue with the Spanish administration is in some sense making its profit. Some of the main textile associations in Spain, we came together and we could work for what is called a PERTE, which is a public funding line for companies to do investments, not just in equipment, but also in staff, also in R&D projects to develop new products or new processes in terms of everything was with the title of circularity in the plastic and textile sector. So there was a big funding of the Spanish government thanks to the next generation funds that came from the European Union that were used, but still, even with this less amount of this fewer amount of investment that the textile manufacturer has to do to apply this kind of recycling technology is not enough. Right? So I believe that probably it's good that the technology is going to be there when the market is going to be able to buy it and to implement it. We see some good initiatives, but still not enough. Probably because also the volume of textile that is manufactured in Spain cannot be compared to the one that is manufactured in India or China or other markets. But the trend is there. The R&D is being put in place. Technological centers in Spain are working closely with companies in terms of digitalizing the manufacturing process in order to have less waste when it's being manufactured. So even we are at this point, but I believe we still need to let the sector to breathe, sell, have some margin, and after then update it. Because Lutz, I think this is something important for us to consider, that the European Union is regulating, the Spanish government is also regulating, and European countries, they are regulating. But we need to consider the situation of the companies that they need to do these investments in order to comply with these regulations. And when I believe better times will come, can be easier, but probably now is not the most favorable moment to do big investments in recycling lines inside one factory, probably.
Yeah, well, Alejandro, I agree with you on that as well. That I think regulation will play a very big role. I think as really as an enabler, as an incentivizer of this of recycling. So I believe in a few years we will see regulation as part of the eco-design directive that will require a certain percentage of recycled material and most likely textile to textile recycled material. So that should give a boost to that market. And it's good to know that technology is ready when we need it. So, and then I think the investments will come as well. I think we are running already quite far into the discussion, but I don't want to let you go without looking at another mega trend, which is not so much regulatory driven, but really technology driven, which is digitalization. So obviously everybody talks about AI, but I think there's a lot more on digitalization when it comes to big data, and we generate a lot of data. We can generate a lot of data as we manufacture textiles because they're so complex. There's so much diversity and variability in that. So textile machines are already to some extent digitized. They are a lot of, usually they're equipped with sensors. They have all the sorts of controls, there's screens and all these kind of things. But what do you see in terms of digitalization as sort of major future trends? We're looking at things like predictive maintenance, remote maintenance, these kind of things. What are the main trends that your companies exploit in the field of digitalization?
Yeah, this is a very good question, very much on point. I talked to one company that they develop software for factories, textile factories. And they were saying that in the past, some years ago, the textile machinery was like a mystery box. And the fabrics, exactly, you knew what you were putting in, but you never knew the exact output that you were getting out of it. This has really radically changed. This is now, even the cost of every square meter of fabric that is being produced inside the machine. So I see trends in terms of sensorizing the factory, the lines, and data to be gathered. But we have an issue Lutz, that is, what do companies do with this data? Because at the end, you mentioned one of the most important points, that is predictive maintenance, and that you know when it's going to be needed spare part before even the problem comes. This is very good, and this is bringing textile manufacturers to the point of being very efficient and to having less costs of manufacturing. And at the same time, digitalization helps to be much more sustainable, because then you need to consume less energy because you are manufacturing with efficiency and with the quality that the product is needed. And an issue that there was some years ago, and probably there are some companies with these problems now, is that when the product is not with the exact quality that the customer is asking, you need to reprocess, and this then you need to use more energy and be, let's say, more or less sustainable. But there is a trend that I wanted to mention also in terms of digitalization, and it's linking digitalization and talent and the kind of skilled labor that is needed now in the industry.
Yeah.
In Spain, it's very common that this kind of familiar traditional SMEs, not just in the textile machinery manufacture, also in the textile mills, in the textile factories, it's very common to see this textile producer, this technician that is for 45, 40 years working in the company, that goes with its own small book with all the secrets of the fabric, of the textile, that this is what makes the difference probably in the market and lets the company to be competitive. But this person one day or another is going to retire and live a happy life, let's say. But or maybe the young engineers, they might go to bigger engineering groups, or at the end there is a European issue right now with labor, in terms of skilled labor to come into the textile factories. But imagine what can you do with a company that is having a factory sensorized, gathering the data, knowing when it is efficient, the temperatures and the water that is being used in their finishing lines, and the energy that is being consumed in the spinning processes, with this kind of information that this person have, also digitalized, and you can combine it. So this is going to bring companies to the next level, because from one day to another, we are not going to solve the issue of bringing new textile engineers or bringing more staff to our textile factories. So I believe that probably the only solution right now is to have all the knowledge and all the information being inside the company in a system, and after train the company to use it in terms for taking decisions. That is probably something that is there. There has been, for talking about Spain, there has been some funds by the Spanish government in terms of for digitalization of textile factories, and also for the industry, that has been leveraged also by textile companies, by Spanish companies. This helped the sector to be also updated. But as a company that they are manufacturing Lycra textile machinery lines, they were saying to me, we feel we are in the first layer of digitalization. We are okay, but we are not coming into the situation where we can say that we are taking all the fruit from it.
Yeah. And you think that this is more as the way you describe it, it seems like it's not so much a technology problem, it's more a skill-related problem. And maybe because we're coming to the end of our conversation, even if I could continue exploring all these trends with you for another few hours. But I wanted to ask you really if there's any things that we haven't really talked about that you believe is really impacting or will be impacting the future a lot. And I believe in a way you probably mentioned the skilled labor issue already, also this generational shift, because we see it also in the textile industry. I think the latest statistics on the European level show that I think more than 40% of the workforce in the textile industry is 50 years and older, which if you imagine not only the total numbers of employees that have to be replaced in some way, but also all the skills, all the knowledge, all this deep experience that the people have that you just described. So I think that probably must be a concern in the textile machinery industry as well.
It is indeed. It is a big concern. We did a strategic session with our members and other textile associations in our territory in terms of for detecting which are the main concerns and to bring up some initiatives to work in the short term, to not to try to solve them, but at least to advance towards them. And as you were saying, talent and the skilled labor is one of the biggest concerns. But I believe everything is a little bit related. And the main topic is we need to create a very attractive textile sector. At least I'm talking about Spain right now. We have industrial groups in Spain that are very attractive, automation, big data, companies that are attracting a lot of talent. But sometimes the textile industry is not the first choice of out of the young talent coming out of the university, or not even our high school students. They are not selecting to study textile engineering in the university. So I believe a big concern in the whole sector, at least in Spain, is to create an attractive textile sector. But more than creating is explaining, because it really is. So every time I have a conversation with someone out of the textile sector, I try to explain in how many places we can see textiles and how textiles, they really impact the life, our regular life. So a task, homework that we have, at least here in the associations in Spain, is to explain better, communicate better, make the sector attractive for the young generations, and also even for the consumers, that they need to appreciate the work that is behind these textile companies, that they are putting a lot of effort, a lot of knowledge into manufacturing their products. That it is very sad to see where are the garments being made, when you think that it is also a national and a local and a European textile industry that can also produce and supply to our society. So probably from our side, we need to take this into big consideration and communicate, explain, and show how important the textile sector is for our daily life.
Absolutely. And well, we try our best in doing that. So I hope this podcast format is also being found, is being listened to by young people, by students, by young professionals to exploit the opportunities that are definitely there in our industry. Well, Alejandro, thank you so much for this wonderful tour d'horizon that you have given us here today. I think if we can summarize, yes, not all the trends right now are necessarily positive, but we see a lot of opportunities on the horizon in international markets, but also in European markets with the new trends of sustainability, digitalisation. We have to attract young professionals, but we have the right companies. We have the companies with the long-term view, with the long-term traditions, with the generational view. And I hope they will be seeing us through a little bit of softness that we experience here in Europe. Alejandro, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. It was great talking to you, and we'll be in touch. And I hope our listeners will find this very interesting too. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.